Canadians will have a new prime minister by lunchtime tomorrow. CTV News has learned Mark Carney will be sworn in late Friday morning. And with this ongoing trade war dominating the national conversation, the prime minister designate says he is ready to sit down with Donald Trump once he officially takes office.
We are ready to sit down with the Americans, with the U.S. government. I'm ready to sit down with President Trump at the appropriate time, under a position where there's respect for Canadian sovereignty, and we're working for a common approach.
Carney has been getting briefings from national security officials in the lead up to his swearing in. All this comes as Canada faces a chaotic and ever-changing trade war and economic uncertainty on both sides of the border as a result. Here to tell us more about this is CTV News political analyst Scott Reid. Good morning, Scott.
Morning, Stefan.
Clearly, Mark Carney has marching orders, or at least a clear idea of what the first order of business should be. How much will the future for him politically depend on what he does now?
Tremendously. It's going to depend entirely upon how these next few days are framed, because this coming election, and I think following the composition of his cabinet, we're going to be very quickly into an election, either will be entirely focused on confronting and overcoming the threat of Donald Trump and tariffs, or it will be a referendum on the past, Trudeau, the Liberals having long been in office. And depending on which question is asked, Mark Carney will be competitive as a candidate for prime minister, or he will probably lose the next election.
Okay. And you've been part of a transition team before with the Liberal Party under Paul Martin, or getting him transitioned and ready for office. What do you think they need to do right now?
This is going to be a completely different exercise. Stefan, this is what I really want to emphasize. This is going to be a different exercise than anyone like myself who's been involved with helping someone come to office as prime minister over the course of the last number of decades. For the first time since the 1940s, we are going to see a war cabinet composed. It will be smaller, it will be more compact, more focused, and more centralized around the critical question of confronting the aggression and hostility we see coming from the White House. Literally, we are in a trade war. We are in an economic war with Donald Trump. We may well be in a war over our own borders, as we've seen Donald Trump threaten the integrity of Canada's territory. And so you're going to see Mark Carney really focus on this issue, building a war cabinet, focusing in on Donald Trump and on this critical, vital, central question of how we meet Donald Trump's aggression.
And Scott, there are maybe two different schools of thought in terms of how we approach the Americans. And some people say go hard and go strong, and others say let's not poke the bear. We know that Carney has already said he's willing to meet with them as long as they respect our sovereignty. So it's almost sounding conditional at this point. Do you think that is more of a pipe dream, or that it could be possible that, you know, U.S. President Donald Trump kind of backs down on this 51st state rhetoric?
I wouldn't expect that Mark Carney, about to carry his party into an election campaign, is going to signal weakness. The only way to manage the monster that is Donald Trump is to demonstrate strength. You compare him to a bear. Well, that bear will wander over if you play possum and chew out your organs. We have to be strong. We have to stand up. We have to run that bear off. That is the reality of it. And frankly, all those voices who said, well, let's just be supplicants, let's try to appease, let's find some sort of compromise. There is no compromising with someone whose word cannot be trusted and who does not understand the value of working with partners. We witnessed the only logical approach unfold this past week. Donald Trump was going to put 50% aluminum and steel tariffs on our products. Doug Ford stood up and said, you know what, well, then we're going to make you pay higher prices for electricity. And Trump backed down. He dropped that to 25%. I wouldn't be surprised in the next number of days he drops it even lower to 0. The only noise that this man respects is a loud noise. The only move that Donald Trump respects is strength.
You know, and the tone changed after that took place, and it felt as though this meeting that's going to happen today in D.C. with Finance Minister and the Ontario Premier may have taken a friendlier tone, but then right on the heels of that, we saw dollar for dollar tariffs being implemented. So do you think that rose the level of tension once again?
Well, too bad. We have to demonstrate that we are willing to act and that we will not be pushed around. And as for who's the aggressor here, yes, there was talk of a more constructive meeting trying to find a path forward. And I know we all would like that. I know people on the American side, they're very divided when they look at Donald Trump's economic approach. The markets have been going crazy. Business leaders are howling. Regular Americans are starting to worry about their jobs and their income. But just, even on the heels of promises that maybe this would be a more constructive meeting, we saw Donald Trump's number one agent, number one delegate, his Commerce Secretary, go on television last night and literally call Doug Ford names. And they do not respect Canada. They refer to us as a state, as a colony, our prime minister as a governor. So I don't think that Canada is being pugnacious or out of line. We have to demonstrate that we will hold a punch in reserve if they continue to come forward.
All right, Scott, I want to thank you for your time this morning. And as you know, things develop rapidly in this situation, and we will be watching very closely. You take care.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.